Hello, everyone. This is Roger Ariel on the Blessed Life channel. Welcome back. I'm just going to fix this setup here to kind of, you know what? I'm just going to turn the Christmas lights on and move over this way. Oh, there we go. Okay, I think I just knocked half of my tree down a little bit. There we go. That's better. Just give me 2 seconds as you guys are logging in. I'm just going to plug in my tree so that there's some extra little bit of lighting and all that stuff going on over here. I don't know how to turn this on. There we go. There, that's better, right? Now I just have to fit my chair and all of this. Okay, yeah, I should have checked this before I came live. I'm going to give a few minutes for people to log in. Let me see. So I'm going to let people log in and one second. Hello, hello. Good evening. We're doing goal setting pre-planning for 2026 today. This is Blessed Life channel. Welcome. Welcome. And as you arrive, remember to bring in a pen or pen and a notebook. And then we can go from there. Okay, I should have actually, we have 3 answers here. Okay. So put your name in the chat if you're coming in. If you're joining, welcome, 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 welcome. And this is the Blessed blessed, I cannot speak today, Blessed Life channel. And I am Roja Ariel. We are going to do some pre planning for 2026 today. All right. So I would suggest if you don't have a pen or a paper, pen and a notebook would be better. Go ahead and grab one. This is going to be a bit of a workshop than anything else. And then we're going to go over some things from 2025 and then everything else. So, for starters, if you don't already have the notebook and pen, grab it now. Um, it is going to be 2026 in a couple of weeks. Now, that is the beginning of another 5-year period. Okay. So, I have been doing this type of goal setting, reflections, planning, pre planning for maybe 10 years. And believe it or not, this has been working so well for me. And the more I've started to incorporate, the Bible and belief systems and teachings from the Bible, the better it has been working every year. Having said that, I want to keep in mind here, like, many are the plans of a man's heart, but the Lord directs the steps, right? God decides ultimately what's going to happen. For instance, in this year alone, and all of from 2020 until now, that 5-year period, especially 2020, 2021 until 2025, there were so many things that were happening that were drastically, drastically unexpected and different from how the previous 5 years were worldwide, correct? So for myself, I was always a on the go person. When the pandemic hit and we had to sit at home, it was a huge lifestyle change for me. And it was a huge personality change for me. I had to learn how to stay home and rest. I had to learn how to take a beat and just relax. Things that I was not accustomed to before. So when you go into the planning, always remember that just because you put it in pen and paper, like just because you have written it down and made the plan, does not mean that nothing is going to come and stop it or divert or reroute some of the plans. Okay. Can everybody hear me okay? Do you want to type in something? No? Okay. Okay. So anyhow, we're going to start off with, now this is a 5-year plan going into 2026. And then, yearly and quarterly plans. I think I will be doing videos every quarter just for update and whatnot. But this right here is a pre-plan, which means the first thing I'm going to ask you to write down and do in your journal or notebook. Get a journal or notebook that you can specifically dedicate towards planning throughout this year, because that's going to be helpful for you if you can have all of the planning in one place. It should be different from an agenda in that whatever you're using every single day to mark off tasks shouldn't be the same as this, unless you have a section where you can do this work. It would be preferable for you to have like a notebook where you could just put, lines and dedicate each page towards each of these things. First thing you're going to do is write down, how was 2025? Okay. I'm going to give you a few minutes. Write down, how was 2025? So when I say 2025, how was 2025? Write down 3 columns: good, bad, so so. Okay. Um, in these columns, you can write down events, achievements, moments, sudden interruptions. So, for instance, I would write down things like, there was a sports accident this year that, one of my family members had to have surgery and things like that. That was not a good thing. That was um, a terrifying thing, and also um, it disrupted their um, like 2-3 months of their life differently. So I would write something like that down. In the same breath, around the same time, like a few months in from that time, there was also a graduation ceremony, there was a completion of something, an achievement or whatnot. So how was this year? 3 columns: good, bad, so, or like, normal. What was it like on an average day? Write that down. After having done that, for each of the things that you have written down, and you may need to do this after this video is actually done. I probably should have used my podcast mic. I should have used a microphone for here. Next time. But yeah, so for each of the things that you have written down, write what category they would fall into. So the 6 categories that we're going to be looking at when planning is we're going to look at financial, we're going to look at physical, which is health and beauty, that kind of thing. We're going to look at emotional, spiritual, which is your relationship with God, your walk with God, intellectual, which is education, career, anything in that area, your business, whatever it may be. And the last but not least, we're going to look at relational, right? So somebody might be having a situation or had a situation where their marital relationship was strained, right? That would go under relational. So you would just write next to it, category relational. Okay. Now, so after all of those things, all of the incidents or the memories and events of this year, and you have tagged them good in each of the columns, good, bad, so, as in everyday life, and tagged each of them and how they went. Now give yourself a column for 2025 goals. Now, I don't know if you are somebody who diligently does goal setting. For myself, I can go look back for the last 10 years. Every single year, there's a list of goals, and I can pinpoint and say, this is what I was focused on this year. Now, if you haven't, maybe you have New Year's resolutions. Maybe you have random goals throughout the year, right? So try and find everything that you aimed to achieve and accomplish and change and complete this year, and write that list down in 2025 at the beginning of the year or throughout the year. What was it that you planned on doing? Write it down in a list, and then mark off the ones that were done. Okay, like put a check mark next to, or just put it in 2 columns. Put the ones that you finished, the ones that you had written down or decided on a goal but did not finish, in 1 column. After doing that, go to 25-year goals. So what would you have put down either in 2020 or 2021 to have accomplished by the end of 2025? So in all honesty, I had 30 goals. Obviously, not all of them were like super high priority goals. And a lot of them, not a lot, not the most, not the vast majority, but many of the 30 did involve family members and things that they had to achieve and what my part was in getting them to achieve that. Okay. Out of the 30, at the end of 2025, I have marked off only 17, little more than half, but there were 5 major ones that did not get too far, either did not get too far or they came very far but have not been completed, or they're in some category around that way. But so you have to now look at all of those goals, both from 2025 and from the last 5-year period, and then write down the ones that did not get accomplished, write down next to them why it did not work out or why it wasn't accomplished. I could go back and look at them and say that this, and this, or like the 3 major ones that did not happen, I did not prioritize it. I didn't have the actual time for it. And yes, though it was really important to me, it was not urgent. It was not pressing important. It was something that I kept putting off as I could eventually do it. I could do it next year too, that kind of thing. So if you have things like that, one thing you want to look at is if you continuously put it off, okay, maybe next year, maybe next year, maybe next year, consider whether it is a priority to you and if it is a goal that you want to achieve. And if it still is, how can you make it so that it does not get put off again for another year, right? Okay. So, underneath all of that, after having decided on the ones that like the any goals that have been on the list for 3 years or more, you want to reconsider it. Because sometimes it could be something that's not happening because of who you're showing up as, and sometimes it could be because it's not even a serious goal. You just put it on there for the sake of putting a goal on a list, right? Like it's not something that you actually care about. Okay? So, after that, we've talked about why things didn't work. Let's look at the ones that you did accomplish and write down why did they work? What did you do and how did you show up for those particular things to have worked? So, things that I did accomplish, all of them involved me actually setting aside the time and I don't even know how to explain this actually. So some of it I had to physically show up in a place to accomplish. One of the things was for me this year was or last year was coaching someone in my family, and I had to physically show up in order to have that accomplished. Okay, so that was one of the goals to a certain get somebody to a certain level for a certain sport or whatever whatnot. Okay, another thing was I had to complete some certifications. I had to physically show up in a classroom or a classroom setting, virtual or whatever it may be, to actually take courses and get them done, write the exams, and mark them off. Okay. Um, so that was career related, and I had to physically show up to do these things. The things that didn't happen for me were the ones that involved me not accounting for sudden surprises or where habitually I had not changed certain patterns. Okay. So I will put that in the category of eating. Over the pandemic, when we were first living in another place, um, we had already gotten into the habit of not always cooking at home, and that at that time, the busyness that I had been living in um, accounted for zero time. Like we would get home just to eat, shower, and go to sleep. We were never home. So there was no time to actually make food ahead of time, meal prep, batch cooking, none of that. Eventually, I had to learn how to do some of these things to cut down on the thing that I did not actually completely achieve, but I was able to change the habits that was keeping me stuck in that area. So Uber Eats used to be a huge deal at the beginning of this year, even not even at the beginning. I wouldn't say it was a huge deal this year. When a situation occurred and there was a lot going on, we ended up um, resorting to Uber Eats again. Although I had already kind of nipped the habit in the butt last year. However, I still had to rewire my entire um, patterns, like entire like system when it comes to cooking, batch cooking, and all of that stuff, in order to get away from eating out, get away from takeout, get away from Uber Eats and all that stuff. And not to mention, I had to do it because it also was affecting my health. In that I can't actually eat out as much anymore because of the things that are in the food that my body is no longer tolerating. So, something like that. And because of that one habit or that particular situation, there was a lot of delay in one of the goals, and that was to completely turn over to home cooking, healthy cooking, all of that, and also to not um, waste money on takeout. or Uber Eats, right? So those are two things that needed to get fixed this way. So write down why it didn't work or what it is that was holding it back, and write down why the goals that did work worked out. What did you do and how did you show up? Okay. What about them went well? Okay. Now we're looking back at the 5 years and we're looking back at the carried over goals, and you're going to look at the characteristics of all of them. Okay. Who did you think that you were going to be at the end of 2025? So let's look at every aspect of who you thought you were going to be. I'm not talking about who the person is that you want to be, but when you look back at 2020 or before the pandemic, if you were to look ahead at 2025, what did you think you would have accomplished? Who did you think you were going to be? How did you think you were going to look? This could include like weight loss or weight gain goals, physical health goals. What did you think you were going to be doing for a living, or in general? Where were you going to live? What were you going to drive? All of it, everything that you thought you would have had by now and done by now and become by now. Write that down. Now, as much as I want to give you guys like 5 minutes to write and stuff, I think if I just give you, because most of you are probably going to see this afterwards, you're probably going to see this in the replay. I see people coming and going, so I'm just going to allow for this to show up in the replay. So write down everything that you thought you were going to be. And okay. So, okay, everything that you thought you would be, and then right next to that, in a separate column, how much of it actually happened. Okay, how much of what you thought you were going to accomplish by now, do by now, become by now, have by now, has actually happened. And I do want to be sensitive here. In a lot of situations, I know this is not going to be something that you could have ever controlled. There could have been losses in your life or family that you could not have controlled in any way or changed in any way. So I want to be sensitive to that, and I hope you know that that's not something that I'm looking at all to think. Just 1 second. I'm just trying to figure out what's happening with this thing over here. Okay, so after you have written down who you thought you were going to be, who are you actually right now? This is going to take some deep thinking about. Are you who you want to be? Who are you? Describe yourself exactly as you are, without any exaggerations, without any sugarcoating, without any glossing over. Exactly who are you at this point in time? At the end of 2025, who are you? What have you done with your life? What have you accomplished? How do you look? Is it how you want to look? Are you healthy? Where is your relationship with God? Where is your spiritual life? What have you learned this year? Have you been learning over the years? Where are you exactly? Okay. And once you've written that, the next column, I would just say, recap, like rewind, go back to the questions that I'm asking, and then write them down in your notebook, and maybe take the time to go over those questions and answer them in your own time. Because obviously, I'm not giving you guys enough time here to get a full, description down of these things. I would go with at least a paragraph for all of these. What did I write down here? Now, this is the most important thing. Take an entire page for this. Who is my ideal self? Who is the ideal self that you want to be? Who is that man or woman? Everything. I know some people like will talk about their careers. Some people will talk about their, spiritual life, emotional life, all of that stuff. But I'm going to say put all 6 categories in there, even physical, even the superficial stuff, what you look like on the outside, what your hair looks like, all of it. Put it down. Your ideal self looks like this, is like this, has this type of personality, has achieved this, is doing this for a living, has this many friends, has traveled here, all of it. Everything that you can imagine that you would want for your ideal self to be. Write that down. Okay. Financially, where you want to be. Write that down also. Okay. Dedicate an entire page to this person, that your ideal self, and make sure there's a second page that's reflecting it, like a second page on the other side that you're going to write this stuff down on. Now, what are the gifts and talents that God has given you that you were, the things that sometimes you see as you're born with or something like that, or the things that over the years that you have learned, which you've become skilled at or an expert at? What are the things that God has placed in you? What are the gifts of the Holy Spirit that God has placed in you? Are you artistic? Can you sing? Can you dance? Are you a musician? Are you incredible at mathematics? Are you hyper organized? That's a thing. That's a gift. I'm telling you. Now, it might not be a gift of the Holy Spirit, but it's definitely a gift that God has given you. Are you extremely organized? Can you cook really well? Are you a good listener, right? So some of the best listeners are therapists. There's always something that leads to something else. So what are the gifts, talents, and specialties that God has placed in you, that you have learned over the years, that you were born with, and that you have honed? Write those down. And so once you have those, now compare what God has given you to the ideal self that you have described. Do the two individuals, like your ideal self, does that individual reflect anything that God has placed in you, God has given you? So are you someone who, is really good at mathematics, and you're acing like calculus or aerospace engineering courses or something like that, or you're in an architecture program because you're so good at that and you're well aligned because God has given you that gift? Or are you someone who is excellent at mathematics, but for whatever reasons, you want to be an author who writes fairy tales, but you can't string together two sentences coherently? So try to understand whether the one side, the ideal self, aligns with how God created you. Okay? It's all right to have dreams that are outside of the box and that are outside of your initial calling or initial gifts. And I'm not saying that every dream has to be realistic, but you do have to start somewhere. And if it's at the very bottom, you're going to have to calculate for how long, how much you'll have to spend on getting that number 2 level skill up to a 10. So nobody is looking in this world for mediocrity, right? No one's looking for a number 5 on the scale or a number 1 on the scale. And this whole entire planning thing, it is biblical, because I'm just going to give you 3 verses or 2 verses and some Bible scriptures. The plans of the diligent shall surely come to abundance, right? It shall bring you abundance. This is in a Proverbs. I think it's 17:18, Proverbs 17:18. You can look it up. And another verse is, write the vision, make it plain, so he who sees it can run with it. So when you have goals and dreams, you got to write them down. Any idea, any thought that God gives you, you got to write them down. Sometimes it's not from God, but it's better to write it down and then pray over it and find out that it's not, than for God to tell you something and you blatantly ignore it because you don't know how to trust your own instincts, right? So it's important to do that. I'm going to go over this entire list over again for any of you. I know there's someone else that just joined right now, so I will go over this again. So I do said, is it Laura? Hi, Laura, how are you? So yeah, we were just at the part where we're talking about the ideal self. So these are the questions that we had gone over. I'm just going to read them out to you. Hi, Laura. It's so good to see you. Thank you for joining. So we want to make 2026 the best year that God can give us, right? And I really want to help people by this thing that I've been doing for like 10 years now. I decided I'm going to share it with everybody else, what I've been doing for goal setting, because it has been working for me. And so we started with this. The first question was, in 3 columns, write down how this 2025 year was. So make sure you have a notebook, and a pen or pencil so that you can at least write the questions down and then you can answer them later if you don't have the time right now. So how was this year? And put them in 3 categories: good, bad, so-so. And just write down anything that you can think about during this year. Events, situations, achievements, all of it. Okay? So that's the first thing we did. Second thing we did is looked at the 2025 goals, all of the goals that you had at the beginning of 2025. Now, I recognize that a lot of people don't actually set goals. Some just set like New Year's resolutions and things like that. So if you have not started living like a goal setting life as of yet, then maybe just look at the resolutions or the things that you came up with over the year 2025. Which of those have you accomplished, and have which of those has happened or fulfilled, and which have not. And then we're looking also for 5-year goals. So 2020, 2021, and from those years until the end of 2025, what 5-year long-term goals have you made, and which of them were accomplished, completed, successful, which were not. Then we're going to look at all of the goals from 2025 and all of the goals from previous. Why were the ones that did become successful actually happen? Like, why were they successful? Why did they happen? What did you do that worked? Because if it's working, we don't want to fix something that's not broken. The things that are working, we're going to try and take it over. That habit, that discipline, that thing that we're doing, we want to take it over to next year with the new goals. Now we're going to look at the ones that didn't work and figure out why they didn't work. So I personally was just sharing this a little while ago, and that I had 30 goals that I wrote down as 5-year goals, which were broken down into yearly goals in 2020. And out of those 30 goals, only 17 were completed in the last 5 years. All of the ones that I did complete, I had to show up for something, whether it's for coaching, whether it's for some kind of volunteering or whatever it may be, or whether it was a class for the certifications that I needed for my career or whatnot. It was the things that I've accomplished were things I had to show up for and set aside specific time dedicated to it, which was mandatory and mandated. The things that did not get done were the things that involved, I wouldn't even say poor planning, but that involved less planning and were more vague. And I had not accounted for everybody else and everything else that could happen, which could have delayed it. So we're going to look at why the things that did not get accomplished, and then from the 5-year list, the ones that have been there for 3 or more years, take a really good look at it and decide, are these not getting accomplished because of situations that are happening or because of habitual things that need to be changed, like disciplining yourself or different routines that need to be added? Or are these goals just not a priority? Right? So we're going to look at that. And then now we're moving into the who were you in 2025? So 3 selves that we want to look at. Who did you think you were going to be at the end of 2025? If you looked back 10 years ago or 5 years ago, who did you assume that you were going to be in 2025? And what are the things? What did you think you were going to have? Did you think you would be married? Did you think you would have kids? Did you think you were going to be done a certain program, working in a certain place? Did you think you were going to, for instance, I know Laura, you guys, whoever's watching, she is a future author. Okay, we're claiming it and naming it in Jesus' name. She's a future author. Were you thinking that maybe you would have had the thing done by now? Right? So questions to ask yourself, like, who did you think you were going to be in 2025? Well, how did you think you were going to look? What was your relationship with God? You know, you're laughing, but I'm serious though. We've had this conversation, Laura. She's laughing because I called her out. Oh, I didn't mean to call you out, but you will be. You will be. You're going to work on that book. So things like that. What did you think you were going to have, be, do at the end of 2025? Where did you see yourself? Now, we're going to look at the reality. This is what you thought you were going to be. Who are you actually? Right now at 2025, who are you actually? Now, this is not something I'm going to, like, if, you know, Laura's on here, when you're writing this down in your book, do not sugarcoat, do not exaggerate, don't leave anything out. Be as honest as, because at the end of the day, you're taking all of this to God in prayer. That's the final goal of today's workshop. I'm going to have only one more workshop after this, hopefully, because it seems to be running a lot longer than I expected. It might be two more, but most likely just one more. You're going to take all of this that's in the book to God in prayer, and you're going to dissect all of this with God, right? So who are you actually? How does it differ from who you thought you were going to be? Okay, so you're going to write all of the things down, like what you look like, what your relationship with God is like, what your patterns and habits and daily rituals look like. Where do you work? What do you do? Are you married? Do you have kids? All of it, everything that someone can look at and say, hey, this is so-and-so. Okay. Now that you know who you thought you were going to be and who you are, we're going to look at the ideal self. Who is the ideal person that you want to be? Okay. If you were to say that as the best version of myself, this is who I am, this is how I show up, this is how I look, this is what I have done, this is my walk with God, these are the things I do daily, these are the things I have, pursued and completed. What is that? Who is that? Okay. Now, this particular question, the ideal self, should have a page of its own. It doesn't have to fill the page, but you should just dedicate the page to that person so that you can come back to it every time you have like a word from God, an instruction from God, every time you have a revelation of something that should change or something that should be added, or a change of heart even of who you want to be. You have to be able to come back and find that same page and then go ahead and add to it, remove from it, all the rest of that. So dedicate a whole page to that ideal person. And finally, when it comes to dealing with the self, what are the gifts that God has given you naturally, the gifts that you were born with, and the gifts that you have honed over the years, um, that God has put in your life. Now, these can include the gifts of the Holy Spirit, which includes things like the ability to teach, preach, prophecy, discernment of spirits, tongues, all of those. These can include that. It can include, dreams and visions and things like that. Like I personally started having dreams when I was like 6 years old that I can remember to this day. I can remember dreams that I had at 6 years old, but I was not a Christian until I was 19. So that was something I always write down in this because God has always been trying to speak to me. I just didn't know. Right. Um, so gifts of the Holy Spirit that are natural to you that God has placed in you. Um, Other things like your ability to write. Can you sing, dance? Are you good at math? Are you a deeply organized person? Do you have this knack for organizing? Because that's a thing. That's a real thing. Um, it's something that many people have made grand businesses out of, right? So I know that sometimes people downplay their gifts. Um, are you good at, you know, like decorating or interior design? Like all of the things that God has put in you that is so specific, so like evident that you know that He gave you this gift, write those down. Okay. The talents, the gifts, the talents, the abilities, and the skills. Okay. And yes, it is biblical because when you look back at the chapters in Exodus that talk about the specificity. Yes, I said it correctly. The specificity of all the details that God wanted in His temple. He had skilled craftsmen, specially there to work on those things. There were carvings of tulips and I think it was lilies, actually lilies and pomegranates that were like woven into the walls and curtains and the tabletops and those kinds of things. So all of these things were very specific skills that God had given to people that He was able to use to glorify Himself, right? So each of the skills are important. Now you're going to look at the person that God created you as with all of the gifts and the talents. You're going to look at the ideal self that you want to be and compare the two. Does the ideal person that you want to be align with the gifts and the talents that God has given to you? Why do I say this? So there was a time in my life where I thought that I had to pursue the thing that was most common or most uh, not just common. It wasn't just common. It was the most reasonable and rational thing because I had my son at 20 and I had to go back to school slowly part time. And so I had to work full time. And I kind of convinced myself to deroute and take a detour in my career pursuits because I didn't think that it was rational anymore to pursue what I knew that God had placed in my heart. But as time went, I had to rethink that. And as I started to do these plannings and things like that, and I started to align, what did God gift me with? What was the ability that He gave me best? And there were two things that always stood out. There was, and those two things were what I had initially tried to pursue before, life events started to happen and started to derail and cause detours. So sometimes that happens to us, right? Like we like a milestone happens, like you either get married or something happens, and sometimes it's a sensitive situation where there's like a loss or something like that, and things get changed around and moved around, and then your destiny, though the destiny God has for you is still the same, gets pushed further away or delayed or even looks a little unrealistic. But when you're aligned with God, when you keep going back to God with the questions, when you keep going back in prayer, and when you keep asking Him to live a purposeful life in Him, He will always turn you back to the thing that he wants you to do, right? And to be fair, there will be seasons. There will be seasons where you're doing one thing and then a season where you're doing another thing. There will be times when he tells you to, pivot. Sometimes you just have to pivot like Ross Geller's couch. Turn, go the other way, right? Those of you who watch Friends, you know what that's about. But you just have to take a turn and go in the opposite direction sometimes. And that's just how God has it. He will say, like, I don't want you living here anymore. I want you to move here. And yeah, you have to be obedient in that time. And that could mean a pause in one thing or stop in one thing and starting on a new thing. But there are some things that are always going to be a part of what God calls you to do. And those are the talents and the gifts and the skills that he's given you, which means just like he said, Jesus talks about the parables of the talents. He says to the one guy, the one with the one talent that decided to bury it, he calls him a wicked servant because he buried his talent. Of course, he's talking about money, right? And we're going to come to money in the second part of the planning. But even with your gifts are supposed to make a way for you. That verse is in the Bible. Your gifts will make a way for you, right? So your gifts are supposed to help you to, bridge your life and to build wealth and to establish your family and all of that. So he will always use the gift towards whatever it is that you're supposed to be doing in that season. So if you're someone like me, if writing is something that's incredibly important to you, and it's the one thing that I can personally say that of all the things, writing is the one thing that I am confident enough to say that if you put me in front of a computer, tell me, you have 2 weeks to put together a chapter book, I can do it. I can't say that about a lot of other things. Probably not anything else, right? So writing. And the other thing that I'm passionate about, I'm already kind of in that area to working towards it when it comes to career. And that was something I had been passionate about since I was 5 years old. And the writing, it started to happen more when I was 14, 15. But no matter how detoured you get, or no matter how detoured I got, no matter how I tried to rationalize doing other things, God did bring me back around to the two things that he blessed me with, which is amazing because the reason so many people get into situations of comparison and competition and, trying to outdo each other. I don't know if you have seen from like the birth of Instagram and social media, friendships have gotten so frail because each friend seems to want to outdo the other friend who, oh, she bought a car. I've got to get a bigger car. She bought a house. I got to get a bigger house. Oh, she just got promoted. I need to be the CEO. It has become like this thing where there's this unspoken competition and the friendship starts to fade and fail because of that, right? But we need to go back to the place where we are all each authentically ourselves, the way God is calling us, so that we're not in like competition with other people. The reason I was always, at least for the last 10 years or so, comfortable with who I am and didn't have that situation where I'm like competing with anybody else or even comparing with anyone else is because God had established the two things for me and he'd made it point blank. So now that was a long rant. So we're looking at who you thought you were going to be, who your ideal self is that you want to be, who you are right now, and all the things that God has blessed you. You are aligning the ideal self with the things that God has blessed you and God has, given to you as a gift, as like he has made you this way. Put the two and two together and see if there's anything out of alignment with the person that you want to be. You can, if there's a desire in your heart, always pray for and work towards becoming the ideal person that you want to be, even if it doesn't align with all of your gifts, even if there's things in there that you'll need to learn. You can. Nothing is impossible with God. Only thing though is recognize that if you have a skill level of something at an 8, and then the ideal self has a skill level of something that's at 2, it's more effort, more time, and more energy put into getting that 2 to an 8 than getting the 8 to a 10. The world is not looking for twos, right? Whenever you go, we don't go to concerts to watch a mediocre saxophonist blare for 2 hours, right? We don't, like, I love the Nutcracker. I would not go spend hundreds of dollars on a ticket to go and watch the ballet if, the person that's performing is falling all over the place. I would not consider that. So we want to get ourselves to a level that is good. Great news is that it is not impossible to get there, right? Nobody comes out of the womb with all the skills necessary to excel in life. Excellence is a habit. Excellence is it's a ritual. You become excellent by doing over and over again. A good example of that is, say, soccer, scoring perfect goals, scoring incredible goals. It takes, in order to figure out how to like maneuver the ball perfectly and deke and control it, it takes 5,000 touches to get your feet accustomed to the ball that way. 5,000 touches. In the same way, I think it's like that many hours to learn the piano really well. It's not impossible. It just takes time and effort. Now you have to figure out, as you're thinking about this ideal person, are you willing to put the time in for you? 2026 is around the corner. Will you show up for you this year? Will you take the time to do the thing that will help you to become that ideal person and that person that God is putting in your heart to become? Okay? The last thing that we're going to do, okay? I'm going to talk about seasons in the next video. And the next video is going to be actually writing out the goals, the actual solid goals that we're going to write out. And then I'm going to come back and talk about accountability and all that things. So make sure to join me in the next video. But this one right here, we're going to finish this with a brand new page, open to a new page, write down 2026 in the middle, and then make 6 branches from the 2026, put relational, intellectual, financial, physical, emotional, and spiritual. 6 branches. I'm going to do that myself just to show you guys. Put those branches down. I hope you have a bigger book than I do. I've already done this in my other book. I just didn't want to share that part. Okay, so the branches are emotional, spiritual, relational, physical, emotional, spiritual, okay, physical, intellectual, and financial. 6 different branches. These are the sections that I always focus on when it comes to compartmentalizing my life. If you have other areas, then you can add that too. So I'm just showing you this, like something like that. But of course, I hope you have a bigger notebook, and I'm just showing that as an example. Mine is in a different one now. And we're going to brainstorm for at least 5 minutes now. Each of these categories, write something that is a major goal, 1 to 3 goals that you want to accomplish in 2026 for it. And it can be, this is a brainstorming session, so like I wouldn't say 1 to 3. Write 1 to 5 goals. Do 1 to 5 in each of them. Make them as bizarre as you want it to be. If you want to say that you're going to become a billionaire by the end of 2026, write that down. The thing is, sometimes we don't allow our minds to get imaginative enough to behold the thing that could happen, right? And so there's a lot of inward work that needs to happen if you think that being wealthy is somehow sinful or evil or any of that, because the inward thing is that you have to start understanding and believing is that money is just a tool. It's a tool. You use it to bless others, you use it to purchase things, you use it to build wealth, you use it to provide for your family and children, but it's just a tool. It can be used to create more money, but it's just a tool. But what happens is it only becomes evil when you start to worship it, when it becomes the idol. Okay? So even if it's as bizarre as becoming a billionaire or buying a yacht or going to space, you want to be an astronaut by the end of 2026. How I know I'm laughing, but I'm very serious when I say it doesn't matter how ridiculous, how unimaginable, how irrational the thing sounds, write it down anyway, because you can go from there to the realistic and to the God ordained goals. Okay. So 5 things for each of these. So I do want to add the physical. This includes like physical workouts and things like that, like how healthy and how fit you want to be, how healthy you want to be, and how you want to look on a superficial level as well as everything else, because everything matters to God, right? I'm not going to say that he's going to like change the color of your eyes or something just because you asked for it, but God does care about the things that you care about. And it is always better to go to God than to, allow for the world or worldliness to catch up to a desire, right? So physical is that. Financial is going to be savings, investments, debt freedom for some people. It could include property, like buying and selling property, all of that. Anything you can imagine on the financial, like where do you want to be at the end of the year financially? Okay. Intellectual is both academic and career. Are you looking for promotions? Are you looking for new positions? Are you learning, taking courses to know something better, understand something better? It could have to do with maybe a second degree, or the first degree if you're working on that still. It's any of it. Intellectual. It could be intellectual, can also be reading as a part of your habit building, right? Like I read every other night, every few nights before I go to bed. I used to every day, taking a little bit of time off here and there nowadays. So that could be part of it. Reading, maybe writing, for instance, if you're planning on writing a book, writing blogs, articles, anything of the sort, maybe learning to write or just writing even a paragraph every day, or finishing the thing that you think that you want to do by the end of the year or by middle of the year. That could be something. Now, spiritual, emotional, I don't know how to explain it. I had a goal for the emotional section to proactively go to therapy so that I did not have to figure out how to react or be in certain situations if they should arise. And I had been doing that since I was pregnant with my son, some 20 years ago. I went to therapy proactively. Now, over the years, I had switched from going to just any therapist to making sure that it is a, Christian counselor with a PhD. And so it has been incredible for me. I don't go regularly anymore, but I have gone during seasons just to make sure that, because sometimes you just need to work on your mind, right? Because all of these things, all of these great goals can be fantastic for you. But if your mind is not there, and if you're not emotionally ready to show up for yourself, that itself can be an obstacle. So it's really important. One, physical health and emotional health are very, very, very important. I learned about the physical health through all of the Uber Eats and the takeouts. And when my body could no longer tolerate sugar and other things, I started to get brain fog and fatigue, and it started to affect my work. It started to affect a lot of things in my life and migraine problems and all of that. So I had to fix my physical health in order to get back to doing everything else, right? So that's that. And spiritual. Now, no matter what you're writing in the spiritual, I'm going to ask or suggest that you also write down hearing God better and listening. I'm going to ask that you make 2026 the year that you intentionally sit and listen to God's response to your prayers. This is life-changing. There is nothing that will help you as much as divine instruction. You know, I went through the vast majority of my Christian life just, blabbing out prayers, reading the word. And of course, through the word, you hear a lot, right? Because that's the first place God has instructions for you. And then I would just go on about my day, and you would get those inklings here and there, like the Holy Spirit tell you, stop, don't go this way, go that way, listen to this, do that, all that stuff. But when I started to set aside time in the mornings, and I call these power hours, where it's 20 minutes of praying, 20 minutes of reading the Bible, and then 20 minutes of sitting and listening. This is equivalent to, now don't get me wrong when I say this, meditation, not the New Age practice, but the biblical one that's in the word. It says meditating on the word, right? It's similar to that in that I would start by reading the Bible and then thinking about what I had read, but then I would also sit and wait and ask God to speak. God speaks to all of his children. Okay? The word says that my sheep hear my voice and I know them. Right? Something like that. My sheep hear my voice and they know me, or I know them, something like that. Which means that you know God, you know his voice. You need to sit and listen and get accustomed to that voice, so that, say tomorrow morning you get up and you think, okay, this is what you're going to do. You're going to be, you're going to pray, do all of this, and then you're going to just get ready, go to work, do this, come back, blah, blah, blah. But he has something else in mind. He wants you to go in a different route. And you going that route is going to be a blessing for somebody, or bring you blessing, or do something life-changing and incredible. You have to be able to hear his voice and recognize his voice to obey it. Okay? So that's spiritual. I'm asking you to add that, but everything else that you want to do, like read the Bible more, pray more, family prayer is a really incredible suggestion. This statistic that has come up regarding marriages, and I think I spoke about this in a previous video. Christian families that pray together, attend church together, and serve together, that do Christianity together, have less than 0.001% divorces, which is like mind-blowing compared to the supposed 40% when it comes to the rest of them, right? So make that a part of your everyday life, right? That should be a goal. Okay, so now we have a whole set of brainstorming done, right? We're going to take all of this, go take time with the Lord, sit in prayer, present every single thing from the very first page, the very first question that I asked, the goals that are still there that have not been done for the last 5 years. And then present this last page, every single page, your ideal self, your all of that, to God. Pray about it. Put it on the altar and say, God, these are the things that I desire. These are the things that I'm hoping to achieve in this year, 2026. Now speak to me, give me guidance, give me instruction, anything and everything that you hear, whether through the word or through the audible voice of God or through the Holy Spirit's inklings and nudgings, write it all down. That is your homework. That is your homework. And also your homework would be to go over those questions again, because you did not, I don't think it was ample time for you to give enough of enough of the descriptions of all of the questions that I've asked. So go over the questions that I have asked and see if you can answer them better also. Take it all to God, pray about it, and everything you hear, put it on a page. Yes, more time is definitely needed. I'm going to give you guys like at least 5 minutes in between me talking and blabbing when we do the second video, so that you guys have actual time to write things down during the workshop, right? Because that's the actual setting the goals. And yeah, so the second video is going to be about actual goals, like setting down the goals, writing the goals down, and organizing them in such a way that it's easy to accomplish. And then we're going to talk about accountability so that they do get accomplished. Okay, so go over all of the questions, answer the questions, take your brainstorming, take it to God, and then write on a page everything that you find in the Word, everything you hear in prayer, and everything the Holy Spirit speaks to you regarding the things that you're praying for. Once that's done, we're going to go over those things at the next workshop, which would be the last one. I don't want to do too many of these. That will be the actual goal setting workshop. I'll come live again and do this with you guys. And then we'll pray together and let 2026 be the year that you become aligned with God's purpose and destiny for your life. Okay, that is the ultimate goal, is to be in His will, heading towards His destiny. Yeah, I'm going to keep this live up. You can go back in it. You can rewind and look at all the questions again. I'm blabbing a lot, so you could forward me to just to be able to, yeah. I'm going to keep this up for you to come back to and refer to. Okay. I've been doing this for 10 years and it's been working for me incredibly. So that's the only reason why I want to share it. If it doesn't work, like if it did not work for me, I would not continue to do it and I would never share it with others. But I do have a heart towards leading people to live purposefully and towards their destiny. That's something that's been like just on my heart all year. So I'm going to be sharing more and more of the things that I have been doing that's been working. Okay. Thank you, Laura. Thank you for joining me today, Laura. Would have been a very lonely live. Thank you. And I'll see you soon, okay? God bless you. Bye now.